Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2, the show where I read the Tanakh and provide my own interpretations of what I think it all means. This week's episode falls on the Shabbat for the 22nd of Adar, 5785, March 22nd, 2025. We're going to be reading chapters 13 through 15 from the book of Samuel, that's Shmuel, book 1, and we'll be doing so in English on Chabad.org if you'd like to follow along. This week's portion, if you're following the normal Torah portion, is Parashat Vayak'hel, so please feel free to read or review my episode from Season 1 if you would like to get that week's portion reading. That being said, let's go ahead and jump on in with this reading of the book of Samuel 1, and once again I remind everybody I'm not a professional scholar, just somebody who wanted to study the scripture. Without further ado, let's jump on in. Chapter 13, verse 1, Samuel 1. Saul was a year in his reign, and he reigned 2 years over Israel. And Saul chose for himself 3,000 from Israel, and they were with Saul, 2,000 in Michmash, and in the mountain of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. And he sent the rest of the people, every man, to his tents. And Jonathan smote the officer of the Philistines, who was in Geba, and the Philistines heard. And Saul sounded the shofar throughout all the land, saying, Let the Hebrews hear. And all Israel heard, saying, Saul has smitten the officer of the Philistines, and also that Israel has become hateful to the Philistines. And the people gathered after Saul to Gilgal. And the Philistines gathered to wage war with Israel, 30,000 chariots and 6,000 riders, and people as numerous as the sand on the seashore. And they went up and camped in Michmash to the east of Bet-aven. And the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were hard-pressed, and the people hid in caves, and in the thickets, in the rocky crags, and in the towers, and in the pits. And some Hebrews crossed the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead, but Saul was still in Gilgal, and all the people hurried after him. And he waited 7 days to the appointed time which Samuel had set, and Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people scattered from him. And Saul said, Bring near to me the burnt offering and the peace offering. And he offered up the burnt offering. And it was, when he finished offering up the burnt offering, that, behold, Samuel came. And Saul went out toward him to greet him. And Samuel said, What have you done? And Saul said, For I saw that the people had scattered from me, and you did not come up at the appointed time. And the Philistines are gathered in the Michmash. And I said, Now the Philistines will come down against me to Gilgal, and I have not yet made supplication before the Lord. And I forced myself, and I offered up the burnt offering. And Samuel said to Saul, You have done foolishly. You have not observed the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought for himself a man after his heart. And the Lord has appointed him to be a ruler over his people, for you have not kept that which the Lord commanded you. And Samuel rose and went up from Gilgal to Gibeah of Benjamin. And Saul counted the people who were present with him, about 600 men. And Saul and his son Jonathan and the people who were present with them were staying in Gibeah of Benjamin, while the Philistines were encamped in Michmash. And the raiders emerged from the camp of the Philistines in 3 companies. 1 company turned to the road leading to Ophrah, to the land of Shual. And 1 company turned to the road leading to Beth Horon. And 1 company turned to the road leading to the border which overlooks the valley of Zeboim toward the wilderness. Now, not a smith was to be found in all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, Lest the Hebrews make sword or spear. And all Israel went down to the land of the Philistines to sharpen each man his plowshare, and his coulter, and his axe, and his mattock. And there was a file for the mattocks, and for the coulters, and for the 3-pronged pitchforks, and for the axes, and to set the goad. And it was on the day of war that neither sword nor spear was found in the possession of all the people who were with Saul and with Jonathan, but Saul and Jonathan his son had them. And the garrison of the Philistines went out to the other side of Michmash. End of chapter 13. So a quick recap and explanation. So it says here, this is now the first year. Saul has been the leader of Israel for 1 year, and it says that he reigned for 2 years. So this is basically saying he's in the midpoint of his time as king. Now, he chooses for himself 3,000 from Israel. And so they're with him in Michmash 2,000, and then also Mount Bethel Meanwhile, with Jonathan, his son, in Gibeah of Benjamin, he's got the other 1,000 that are left over, and the rest of them he sends home. Now, what's interesting here, it says Jonathan smites the officer of the Philistines, all right? So he took him out in Gibeah, and the Philistines hear about it, and so now Saul blows the shofar, he's blowing the war horn, and basically saying, like, let everybody know this is going down. And it becomes known that he smites the officer of the Philistines. And note this, it said Jonathan is the one who did it, but it says Saul has done it. This is significant. Again, Saul is the king. Jonathan is his son, but he's ultimately getting credit for it as the king. So now they're following after him, and they the Philistines gather together to wage war, 30,000 and 6,000 riders. So 30,000 chariots, 6,000 riders, and people as numerous as the sand. So now they're looking around, and it says the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait. The people were hard-pressed. The people hid in caves and in thick. So basically, people are terrified seeing this. They say that the people are in a strait. They're really, and these are hard times, and they are terrified. And so it says some crossed the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead, but Saul remained in Gilgal, and all the people hurried after him. So it says he waited 7 days to the appointed time. So what happened was there was some set agreement between Saul and Samuel that they're going to meet on this particular day and time, and then presumably they're going to have the offering and go to battle. Now, what happens is Saul is waiting there, and Samuel doesn't show up on time. So what happens? Well, the people start scattering. Basically, you're starting to see panic set in. People are panicking and starting to flee. So what does Saul do? He says, well, okay, bring me the burnt offering and the peace offering, and he does them himself, right? So bring near me the burnt offering and peace offering. Now, this is Samuel's job. This is not his job. He is not supposed to be doing this. He's a Benjamite. He's not a Levite. This is not something that he's supposed to be doing, even if he is the king. So now, right after he gets done, Samuel shows up, and Samuel's like, what have you done? And what have you done? And Saul says, well, you weren't here, and everybody was freaking out, and the Philistines are here, so I figured I better make a sacrifice to God before the Philistines come down on us, right? So I went ahead and did it. I forced myself, and I offered up the burnt offering. And Samuel tells him, you've done foolishly. So keep in mind, in the previous chapters, he was saying, if you follow the commandments, you get to keep your king and everything will be fine. But here he now says, you have not observed the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. So he's basically saying, like, if you didn't screw this up, you would have been made king forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought for himself a man after his heart, and the Lord has appointed him to be rule over his people. For you have not kept what the Lord commanded you. So what ends up happening, Saul has 600 men, and so he's lost his bulk of his army, and that's fine. We'll talk about that in a moment. So it says that he and his son Jonathan and all his army, they go together. Now here's the situation. Saul was panicking, clearly, and this is evidence of lack of faith. Gideon, if we recall Gideon, I brought him up before because I think he's such an impressive figure. He has to go against the enemy as well. And he only has, well, actually, it's not even that he only has. He has a sizable force, and God tells him, no, that's too many people. Whittle it down, because otherwise people are going to think it's just because you won because of numbers. Make it so that it's a small enough number of people that it would really be obvious that God was on your side. So this is the test that Saul just failed. He was being tested. His faith was being tested. And instead of just being patient, trusting in God, and not doing what he was not told to do, or told not to do, he instead did the wrong thing and lost the mandate of heaven. That's what he had, like in the Chinese context, right? The mandate of heaven, the authority to rule over the land. This is what Saul had, and he lost it here and now. So now he ends up with his 600 men, and guess what? That's fine. That's all he really needs, right? Because you don't need more than one sword, right? One for every 1,000 if God wills it. So in any case, what happens is the raiders emerge from the Philistine camp, and they're all over the place. And the Hebrews don't have weapons. There's no blacksmith to make weapons among the Hebrews because they basically wanted to make sure that the Hebrews could not make their own weapons. So instead, they all have farming equipment. And it says the plowshares, the axes, all these things. And they basically sharpen their tools for war. And Saul and his son Jonathan do have swords, while everybody else doesn't. So war is going to happen regardless of how many people stuck around, and this was an opportunity for him to preserve the mandate of heaven, but he lost it. Now on to chapter 14, verse 1. Samuel 1. And it came to pass one day that Jonathan the son of Saul said to the youth who bore his weapons, Come, and let us cross to the garrison of the Philistines, which is on the other side yonder. But he did not tell his father. Now Saul was staying in the outskirts of Gibeah, under the pomegranate tree which was in Migron, and the people who were with him were about 600 men. And Ahiah the son of Ahitub, the brother of Ichabod, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the priest of the Lord in Shiloh, wearing an ephod, and the people did not know that Jonathan had gone. And between the sides which Jonathan sought to cross to the garrison of the Philistines, there was a rocky crag from this side, and a rocky crag from this side, the name of one being Bozez, and the name of the other being Seneh. One crag was situated from the north, opposite Michmash, and one opposite Geba. And Jonathan said to the youth who bore his weapons, Come, and let us go to the garrison of these uncircumcised. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf. For with the Lord there is no limitation to save with many or with few. And his weapon-bearer said to him, Do all that is in your heart. Turn to you. Behold, I am with you according to your heart. And Jonathan said, Behold, we are crossing to the men, and we shall reveal ourselves to them. If they say to us thus, Wait until we reach you, then we shall stand in our place, and we shall not go up to them. And if they say to us thus, Come up to us, then we shall go up, for the Lord has given them into our hand, and this will be the sign for us. And the both of them revealed themselves to the garrison of the Philistines, and the Philistines said, Behold, the Hebrews are emerging from the holes wherein they hid themselves. And the men of the garrison called to Jonathan and his weapon-bearer, and said, Come up to us, and we shall tell you something. And Jonathan said to his weapon-bearer, Come up after me, for the Lord has given them into the hand of Israel. And Jonathan climbed up on his hands and on his feet, with his weapon-bearer after him, and they fell before Jonathan, and his weapon-bearer was slaying after him. And the first slaughter which Jonathan and his weapon-bearer made was about 20 men, in about half a furrow, in a field. And there was trembling in the camp and the field, and among the people. The garrison and the raiders also trembled, and the earth quaked, and became a trembling inspired by God. And Saul's lookouts in Gibeah of Benjamin, and behold, the multitude was wandering, and it was coming closer. And Saul said to the people who were with him, Inspect now, and see who is gone from among us. And they inspected, and behold, Jonathan and his weapon-bearer were not there. And Saul said to Ahiah, Bring near the ark of God. For the ark of God was on that day with the children of Israel. And it was, while Saul still spoke to the priest, that the tumult which was in the camp of the Philistines was continuously increasing. And Saul said to the priest, Withdraw your hand. And Saul and all the people who were with him gathered, and came to the battle, and behold, every man's sword was against his fellow, because there was a great, very great confusion. And the Hebrews who were with the Philistines as previously, who went up with them in the camp round about, they too turned to be with the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. And all the people who were hiding in Mount Ephraim heard that the Philistines had fled, and they too pursued closely behind them in battle. And the Lord saved Israel on that day, and the battle passed Beth-aven. And the men of Israel were hard pressed on that day. And Saul adjured the people, saying, Cursed be the man who will eat food until evening, until I shall be avenged of my enemies. And none of the people tasted any food. And all the people of the land came into the forest, and there was honey on the ground. And the people came into the forest, and behold, a flow of honey, but no one put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. But Jonathan had not heard when his father had adjured the people. And he extended the end of the staff which was in his hand, and dipped it into the honeycomb. And when he brought back his hand to his mouth, his eyes brightened. And one man of the people called out and said, Your father adjured the people, saying, Cursed be the man who eats food today. And the people have become faint. And Jonathan said, My father has perturbed the land. See now that my eyes have brightened, for I have tasted a little of this honey. How much more if the people had eaten today of the spoils of their enemies, which they found? Would there not now have been a greater slaughter among the Philistines? And they smote the Philistines that day, from Michmash to Ayalon, and the people became very faint. And the people flew to the spoil, and took sheep and oxen and calves, and they slaughtered on the ground, and the people ate with the blood. And they told Saul, saying, Behold, the people are sinning against the Lord by eating with the blood. And he said, You have transgressed. Roll a huge stone to me this day. And Saul said, Disperse among the people, and you shall say to them, Bring near to me each man his ox and each man his lamb, and you shall slaughter here, and you shall eat, and you shall not sin against the Lord by eating with the blood. And all the people brought near each man his ox that night, and they slaughtered there. And Saul built an altar to the Lord. With that one he started to build an altar to the Lord. And Saul said, Let us go down after the Philistines at night, and plunder among them until morning light, and let us not leave a man among them. And they said, Do all that is good in your eyes. Whereupon the priest said, Let us draw near here to God. And Saul asked of God, Shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you deliver them into the hand of Israel? But he did not answer him on that day. And Saul said, Draw near here, all you chiefs of the people, and know and see wherein was this sin today. For as the Lord lives, who saves Israel, for though it be in Jonathan my son, he will die. And there was no one who answered him from among all the people. And he said to all Israel, You will be to one side, and I and my son Jonathan will be to one side. And the people answered Saul, Do what is good in your eyes. And Saul said to the Lord God of Israel, Give a perfect lot. Whereupon Jonathan and Saul were taken, and the people escaped. And Saul said, Cast lots between me and Jonathan my son. And Jonathan was taken. And Saul said to Jonathan, Tell me, what have you done? And Jonathan told him and said, I but tasted a bit of honey with the end of the staff which is in my hand. Here I am. Let me die. And Saul said, So shall God do, and so shall he continue, for you shall die, Jonathan. And the people said to Saul, Shall Jonathan, who has wrought this great salvation in Israel, die? Far be it. As the Lord lives, not one hair of his head shall fall to the ground, for he has worked with God this day. And the people redeemed Jonathan, and he did not die. And Saul went up from pursuing the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their place. And Saul took the kingdom over Israel, and he waged war against his enemies on every side, against Moab, and against the children of Ammon, and against Edom, and against the kings of Zobah, and against the Philistines, and wherever he would turn, he would cause them to tremble. And he gathered an army, and he smote Amalek, and he saved Israel from the hand of its plunderer. And the sons of Saul were Jonathan, and Ishvi, and Malchishua. And the names of his daughters, the name of the firstborn was Merab, and the name of the younger was Michal. And the name of Saul's wife was Ahinoam, the daughter of Amnaz. And the name of the commander of his army was Abner, the son of Ner, Saul's uncle. And Kish, the father of Saul, and Ner, the father of Abner, were sons of Abiel. And the war against the Philistines was severe all the days of Saul. When Saul saw any valiant man or any soldierly man, he would bring him in to himself. End of chapter 14. Very long chapter. We'll try to summarize in a succinct manner. So here we see that in the very beginning of this, the army is sort of pitched up and ready to go. They're waiting for the right moment to strike, or whatever the reason may be. But Jonathan, son of the king Saul, the prince of Israel, he says to his weapon bearer, so this is like his right-hand man, he says, let's go to the enemy. Let's go across. Let's cross the other side. Let's go to the Philistine side. And so what they do is him and his weapon bearer sneak across, and they do so with nobody finding out. The two of them sneak over to the enemy's side, and they have a situation where they are encountered by the Philistines. And Jonathan says to his partner, listen, if they say to us, stay where you are, then we'll stay still. But if they say, come to us, that will be the sign that God has delivered them into Israel's hand. And sure enough, the Philistines do exactly that. They tell him the right words, and Jonathan he, with full faith and conviction, he moves forward. Now, what's incredible about Jonathan here, this is the key. Jonathan is the hero of today. There are two things I want to draw attention to. The first thing I want to point out is that earlier in this story, the previous chapter, Saul did the sacrificial fire the wrong way because the people were abandoning him. He did not have faith and courage. Now here's Jonathan, by himself with one person, no great army, just two people. The word here is emunah. He had unbelievable faith because look at him. Now this is also a great tragedy because we see here what an incredible dynasty this would have been. Saul, he may not be all that great in this current chapter here, but look at his son. Look at the quality of this man. And it said Saul, and this I think would have been the key because it said definitively earlier, right? Samuel told him that you would have been established as the kingdom forever. It would have been your kingdom, and you blew it. And now we see proof of that. What Jonathan just did here was huge. It was because he says, right, does Lord not have the power to save, whether they are few or many? And it's just the two of them. So that is the key. Jonathan proved it. But there's one other thing I want to draw a comparison to. Not only does he do this great thing and show that he has faith, in opposite of his father's conduct, but there's another person that this makes me think of. Abraham. When Lot was captured in Genesis, his nephew was captured among the people of Sodom. When all of the kings of Sodom, there were like these 5 kings that waged war and everything. And they take the Sodomites, including his nephew Lot. This is one of Abraham's big moments where he basically gets word that his nephew's been captured. So he goes and like in the middle of the night or something, he goes across and he does exactly what Jonathan's doing here. He just takes him out because he believes with faith, and so it shall be. So this shows us that Jonathan was not just a great person in that way, but he was almost like Abraham. Look at him. This is also to establish the kingdom, right? Abraham received the covenant and received the blessing, and his name would be established forever. Saul had Jonathan in this moment. The very same thing would have happened. His son would have been the successor and become the greatest kingdom. He had it in the bag, and he blew it. Look at the quality of his son who truly loves God. But unfortunately, the iniquity of the father is remembered for 3 or 4 generations. And in this case, bad news. So what ends up happening is you can see that Saul is not so confident as Jonathan. He lacks the same faith. And sure enough, he's calling out to the priest. So there's a commotion in the camp of the Philistines, and everybody's like, "Oh, what's going on here? Oh, whoa, what's going on?" So they take a look around, and Saul says, "All right, wait a minute. One of our guys must be doing this. Figure out who's missing." Turns out it's Jonathan. And then he says, "Bring near the ark of God." So while this is all going on, the Philistine issue gets worse, and so he tells the priest, "Withdraw your hand." In other words, he's like, wait, never mind. Leave the ark behind. So this also further shows the difference between the two. There's already a miracle happening, but at least Saul recognizes, wait a minute, no, I don't need to do that. Did we not have this situation happen before where they thought, well, we've got the ark of God, so it'll work out? So yeah, Saul is clearly slipping here. Now, nevertheless, things go wild, and they end up causing the Philistines to rout, and they start running. And the Israelites who are all up there, they're all hearing about it, and now this is really becoming a crazy battle. But the Philistines are killing their own men because they're confused, and it's terrifying. So in any case, they now flee, and even the people hiding in Mount Ephraim, everybody is starting to chase the Philistines. Now, everyone in Israel is hungry. It says they were hard-pressed on that day. But Saul tells them, "Cursed be the man who will eat food until evening, until I shall be avenged of my enemies." And none of the people tasted any food. So now, here's what happens. He puts this curse out there in the air. He utters a curse against his own people because he's just so fixated that he's cursing his men to not be allowed to eat and replenish and restore themselves until he gets his revenge, until nighttime. Like, get over yourself, dude. You didn't even get this victory. You're just there. Your son did this without you. You're nothing. And now look what you've done. Because what happens? He gives this curse out, and then the most horrible thing happens. Jonathan, the one who's done all these great things today, does not hear this. So he walks into the forest and goes, look at this. And he tastes a little bit of honey off the ground. And again, this is the land flowing with milk and honey. And so when he eats it, suddenly someone says, "Oh no, Jonathan, your father put a curse." And Jonathan says, "My father has perturbed the land. See now that my eyes have brightened, for I have tasted a little of this honey." Right? So this is another thing. It shows just how incredible Jonathan was. He has, in this moment, he has stepped into the forest and sees before him a bounty provided by God. This honey in the forest, it says his eyes were brightened. In other words, he was also fatigued. They were all fatigued. They were all hard-pressed. He tasted the honey, and just a taste of it filled him with vigor. It was all he needed to be like, whoa, I'm powered up. And so he simply says, "My father's perturbed the land. Look at what just happened to me when I tasted the honey." Now imagine how amazing our army would have done if everybody was allowed to eat like I just did. My father has basically lost it, is what he's really saying here. My father blew it. He's made a horrible mistake. So there's another mistake that comes of this. Everybody's starving by the end of the day. They're famished, and they start slaughtering the Philistines. But now everybody's just so hungry that what do? Well, they start slaughtering the animals and start eating because they cannot wait. They're starving. And it says, "And the people ate with the blood." This is another sin. This sin is older than the Torah. It is a sin from the era of Noah, right? I mean, Noah even has sins regarding this. So they are really, they are blowing the whole thing. Like, they are not doing right. And again, whose fault is this? Ultimately, it's Saul, because he did not let his people eat, so now they're really hungry. So they're just making mistake after mistake. He's a total failure. But nevertheless, he says, "Roll me a stone." So he says, "You have transgressed, roll a huge stone to me this day." He stops them from eating and tells them, like, "You're breaking the commandments. We got to fix this." So they have a formal, proper sacrifice and slaughter and whatever. And then also he builds, using that stone, an altar to the Lord. And Saul now uses this altar as a point to reckon and say, "Hey, God, shall we continue?" But there's no answer. Why not? Well, it turns out there's a sin among them. Who sinned? Who sinned and had not been rectified? For some reason, there is a person bearing a great iniquity among the camp. Who is it? Turns out it's Jonathan. And by Saul's own words, he says that, even if it's my son, the person who's responsible, so be it. So that he's going to kill Jonathan. And the people basically, it's described as them saying, like, "No, you won't, because he's the hero today." And Jonathan was willing to die, but even though Saul was prepared, the people refused. They say, "Shall Jonathan, who has wrought this great salvation in Israel, die? Far be it. As the Lord lives, not one hair of his head shall fall to the ground, for he has worked with God this day." So in other words, the way they say it says the people redeemed Jonathan. I think what was really going to happen is if Saul hurt Jonathan, the army was going to kill him, because they were serious. They're not. You are going to take out the hero of today's battle? No, not a chance, because that hero is on God's side. Really, the thing here, this is so interesting, right? If we really take a look at the phrasing, we can infer something inverted here. So first it says, he tells all of Israel, "I'm separating you. You go on one side, and I and my son will be on the other side." So already the people of Israel are moved away. They cast lots, and the lot is drawn as Jonathan. So this is my own mental gymnastics. I don't think this is necessarily, but maybe if we read into this, what does this really mean? The ones who were chosen were all the people and Jonathan, meaning Saul was the only one not chosen. Now, normally the lot would mean that Jonathan's the bad guy here, but in reality, it's the opposite, right? In other words, he's being separated from Saul. That's how I'm choosing to interpret this, because ultimately Saul's a failure here. He has completely failed in every respect, and the people will not let this go pass. So now we see it. Saul is on his own, in his own way. And his own people stand against him for the sake of Jonathan. Very nice. So it says here, after all is said and done, Jonathan's spared. Saul goes up after pursuing the Philistines. The Philistines run home, and he takes the kingdom over Israel, wages war against all sides. So there are enemies on all sides of Israel. He fights all of them. Edom, Zobah, Philistines, Ammon, Moab, all of them are his enemies, and he fights them. And it says he gathered an army, and he smote Amalek and saved Israel from the hand of its plunderer. Hooray! The sons of Saul are Jonathan, Ishvi, and Malchishua, his daughters as well, Merab and Michal, his wife, his uncle. We get to see who is who. Now, there's one last note here. We see that the commander of his army is his cousin. Okay, and we see also that any time there was a person in Israel who was valiant or soldierly, he would bring him into himself. So, in other words, any person who was of valor, he would say, "That's my new soldier. Give me here. Come here. You're mine now." So this is how he's conducting himself, and this was part of the warning that they received before they got their king. Now moving on to chapter 15, verse 1 in the book of Shmuel 1. Let's begin. And Samuel said to Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you to be king over his people, over Israel. And now hearken to the voice of the words of the Lord. So said the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid wait for him on the way, when he came up out of Egypt. Now go, and you shall smite Amalek, and you shall utterly destroy all that is his, and you shall not have pity on him. And you shall slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and donkey." And Saul called the people together, and he counted them in Telaim, 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came as far as the city of Amalek, and he fought in the valley. And Saul said to the Kenite, "Turn away and go down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. And you did kindness with all the children of Israel when they went up out of Egypt." And the Kenites turned away from amidst Amalek. And Saul smote Amalek from Havilah until you come to Shur, which is in front of Egypt. And he seized Agag, the king of Amalek, alive, and he completely destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. And Saul and the people had pity on Agag, and on the best of the sheep and of the cattle, the fatlings and the fattened sheep, and all that was good. And they did not want to destroy them, but everything which was vile and feeble they utterly destroyed. And the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, "I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me, and he has not fulfilled my words." And it distressed Samuel, and he cried out to the Lord all night. And Samuel arose early in the morning to meet Saul. And it was told to Samuel, saying, "Saul has come to Carmel, and behold, he is setting up a place for himself, and he passed and went down to Gilgal." And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, "May you be blessed of the Lord. I have fulfilled the word of the Lord." And Samuel said, "What then is this bleating of the sheep in my ears, and the lowing of the oxen which I hear?" And Saul said, "They brought them from the Amalekites, for the people had pity on the best of the sheep and the oxen, in order to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed." And Samuel said to Saul, "Desist, and I shall tell you what the Lord spoke to me last night." And he said to him, "Speak." And Samuel said, "Even if you are small in your own eyes, are you not the head of the tribes of Israel? And the Lord anointed you as king over Israel. And the Lord sent you on a mission, and said, Go, and you shall utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and you shall wage war against them until they destroy them. Now, why did you not hearken to the voice of the Lord, but you flew upon the spoil, and you did what was evil in the eyes of the Lord?" And Saul said to Samuel, Yes, I did hearken to the voice of the Lord. I did go on the mission on which the Lord sent me, and I brought Agag, the king of Amalek, alive, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. And the people took from the spoil sheep and oxen, the best of the band, to sacrifice to your God in Gilgal. And Samuel said, Has the Lord as much desire in burnt offerings and peace offerings as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than a peace offering, to hearken better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and stubbornness is as idolatry and teraphim. Since you rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you from being a king. And Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned, for I transgressed the Lord's command, and your words, for I feared the people, and I hearkened to their voice. And now forgive me my sin, and return with me, and I shall prostrate myself to the Lord. And Samuel said to Saul, I shall not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being a king over Israel. And Samuel turned to go, and he seized the skirt of his robe, and it tore. And Samuel said to him, The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and has given it to your fellow who is better than you. And also the strength of Israel will neither lie nor repent, for he is not a man to repent. And he said, I have sinned. Now, honor me now in the presence of the elders of my people, and in the presence of Israel, and return with me, and I shall prostrate myself to the Lord your God. And Samuel returned after Saul, and Saul prostrated himself to the Lord. And Samuel said, Bring Agag the king of Amalek near to me. And Agag went to him delicately. And Agag said, Surely the bitterness of death has turned. And Samuel said, As your sword bereaved women, so will your mother be bereaved among women. And Samuel hewed Agag in pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. And Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house in Gibeah of Saul. And Samuel came no more to see Saul until the day of his death, for Samuel mourned for Saul, and the Lord was repentant for that he had made Saul reign over Israel. End of chapter 15. So once again, it's time for a recap. Quite a few things happen here. In the beginning, Samuel tells Saul, The Lord has sent me to anoint you, so listen and do exactly as you're told, okay? Remember Amalek. Go slaughter them. Go and destroy Amalek. Do not have pity on Amalek. Destroy man, woman, and child. Everything. Animals, people. If it's an Amalekite, destroy it without mercy. Wipe them out, no pity. And so he brings an army of 200,000 footmen and 10,000 the men of Judah. So he gets to the city of Amalek, and he fights in the valley, and he sees the Kenites. Now, the Kenites have been relevant a few times. You could say that they are the descendants of Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, right? So whatever they may be, they are a friendly people that are not quite of Israel, but they are friendly to Israel. And so it openly makes a point to say that Saul tells them, we remember you were kind to us. You get out of here. Don't die on behalf of Amalek. So they let the Kenites go, and then they start slaughtering the people of Amalek. However, they spare the king named Agag, as well as the best of the animals. What was said? Don't take pity. What did they do? They took pity. They kept the king, and they kept the best-looking animals. And now, as they're all standing there in the success of the day, the word of the Lord gets to Samuel, and he hears those terrible words. I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned his back from following me. He has not fulfilled my words. Samuel, hearing this, is overwhelmed with distress. He's crying about it all night. Next morning, first thing he does is he hurries to go see Saul, and Saul is in Carmel. He's got a place set up for himself. And so Saul reports to Samuel, Hey, boss, good old Samuel, good news. I did my job. And he's saying this as the animals are in the background. So Samuel goes, Oh? Then why do I hear animals? Shouldn't you have no sound at all if you did your job? And what's all the other animals? What's going on here? I thought I was very clear that you were supposed to destroy everything. So why didn't you? Oh, yes, about that. Well, you see, we were gonna, but then, we decided to keep some of the animals to sacrifice, of course. Same thing with the king, we brought him back. Yes, we kept the king alive, too. Uh-huh. And, great, And Samuel says to him, listen here. You might think that you're not that important. You might think you're a small fry, that you can do stuff like this. But do you not remember the fact that you are the king of all of Israel? That you are supposed to be the big guy that does the job? And so he's telling him, what kind of an example are you setting as king that you are not obeying what God tells you to do? And he starts making excuses. And he's like, well, I did it. It's just, I did the other. I brought home some stuff, yeah. But, I did everything else, right? And then we could sacrifice him. It's great. And Samuel says, really? Great, is it? Let me tell you something. God likes it. Rather than receiving gifts, God prefers it when you just do what he tells you to do. So in other words, don't try to turn this into, oh, well, I thought I'd give him a present. You can give him a present after you fulfilled what he said to do. By not doing it, you're super guilty. So Samuel goes so far as to say, to obey is better than a peace offering. To hearken is better than the fat of rams. Rebellion is as the sin of divination. Stubbornness is as idolatry and teraphim. Since you rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you from being a king. So now Saul accepts it. He says, I've sinned. I've transgressed. I basically gave in to the cry of the people. So what probably happened is the people were like, hey, Saul, let us take the treasure. And he caved in and said, fine. Or maybe he just is making excuses. Either way, he's saying, forgive me my sin and return with me, and I shall prostrate myself. And Samuel says, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word, and the Lord has rejected you. And as Samuel turned to go, I believe it's saying that Saul grabbed at his skirt, and it tore. So with that, Samuel tells him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and given it to someone better. Also, the strength of Israel will neither lie nor repent, for he is not a man to repent. So I believe he's saying the one that's better than you is not one that needs to repent. And he says, I've sinned. Honor me in the presence of the elders of my people. So what ends up happening is he's basically saying, I acknowledge my sin, but please, at least in this moment, so that I don't get embarrassed, will you please return with me? So it says Samuel returned after Saul. The way it says here, returned after Saul, makes me think that Saul went and then Samuel went. So, Vayak'hel Shmuel acharei Shaul. So this is basically saying, yes, that's exactly what happened afterwards. So they don't go together. Now, that's how I'm interpreting the sentence here. And Samuel instead, he's got some job to take care of. So Saul goes back, Samuel stays behind, and he slaughters the king Agag. And the king is like, oh, surely the bitterness of death has turned. No, actually, the way that, how you made women bereaved with grief over the things that you've done? Well, now your mother can be one of those women and be bereaved too. And he cuts them to pieces. And after this, the two part ways. Samuel goes to Ramah, Saul goes to Gibeah, and Samuel no longer goes to see Saul until the day of his death. For Samuel mourned for Saul, and the Lord was repentant that he had made Saul reign over Israel. So in other words, in this moment, Samuel treats it like Saul is dead to him. And also, there's another reason that he probably doesn't go and see Saul, and that's because he knows that there's now probably a threat. Saul knows that Samuel's the only one who can indicate who the new king will be, so maybe it's just safer to stay out of his way. In any case, we see here 2 chapters in succession. It's just a 2-year period of ruling, but we see that Saul really dropped the ball, and this sin, we see a repeat of sins, right? So giving, of course, cursing people and things like that. But also in this one, it reminds us of what happened during the time of Joshua, right? We had a similar situation where they were told, destroy the city, leave nothing behind, take none of the spoils. And somebody took the spoils, and it caused a sin to fall on the people. So here we have this once again. Saul learned nothing from the ancestors and, of course, repeated a great sin, and he has lost the kingdom. So it's no longer that he is... not only did he previously say you're not going to be established as a king, but now God says, I regret making you a king. That's pretty intense. So next time, I'm sure we'll find some information about who that new wonderful king is going to be. But until then, this has been Shmuel Moshe with the Weekly Parashahcast saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you next time. Also, one last note before I go, I always find this very funny how this works out. But between last week and this week, we had the holiday of Purim, right? So last episode was about Purim, and we learned about a character named Haman. But what was Haman's name? He was Haman the Agagite. And who is the king that just got slaughtered? Agag. So is he a descendant of that man? This just may be the case. An Amalekite, that's why they say Haman was of Amalek. Now we see exactly where this part of the story comes from. So very, very interesting. And, the synchronicities here, there are no such things as coincidences, my friends. What is the coincidence of the timing that last week was the Purim episode and this week I was covering King Agag? Very, very interesting. But isn't it wonderful when things line up like that? Well, in any case, back to the usual outro and farewells. This has been Shmuel Moshe saying, once again, Baruch Hashem.